Whatever.
Leaving our mark seems to be part of our nature. Some of the earliest evidences of human activity are the images painted on the walls of caves. In the ancient world, functional objects and religious articles were often decorated with symbols and figures. As artistic techniques became more sophisticated, artists made pictures on a wide range of surfaces: wood panel, cloth, plaster walls, fine handmade paper, and eventually canvas stretched over wooden frames. Using colored pigments to apply images directly to a two-dimensional surface would become known as the art of painting. As cities and empires began to grow, there was ample work for artisans to decorate civic buildings, royal palaces, and places of worship. The artisans employed usually toiled in anonymity as part of a guild or workshop in service of the ruler or religious leaders. But many societies eventually developed a wealthy merchant class who could afford to commission these artisans to make art for them too. To show off their wealth and power, these new patrons competed for the most talented artisans. Pretty soon, some of these very talented artisans would become well known. Their status in society moved from lowly anonymous craftsperson to highly regarded sought-after artiste, the rock stars of their time. As there are only so many palaces and religious buildings to go around, to meet the demand for their work, these newly designated artists began making artworks that could be hung rather than painted directly on the walls. These standalone artworks came in many sizes, but with a few exceptions, they all had one thing in common: the surface they were painted on was a rectangle. Fast forward to the modern era, particularly in the Western world. Modern artists, smitten with the speed, emerging technologies, and new ideas of a rapidly changing world, wanted to find ways to express the modern experience. These modern artists began questioning everything about art that had come before them. They began to experiment with new ways of painting, employing things like collage, geometry, and wild applications of paint and color. Their work challenged traditional norms. Soon, some artists would question why a painting had to be confined to the rectangle at all. Painting in the 1920s, Hungarian artist Laszlo Perry is often seen as the first modern artist to really explore making paintings that used irregularly shaped canvases. Another group of artists from Buenos Aires, known as Grupo Madi, also began making what they called concrete art that used shaped canvases in the 1940s. These artists opened the shaped canvas door. We're going to take a look at 5 artists who really pushed the boundaries, no pun intended, of a painting's shape. In the 1950s, New York City had become the center of the art world. This is where Frank Stella began his career as an artist. At the time, a style known as abstract expressionism, with its emphasis on a highly charged emotional content and brushy dripping paint, was all the rage. Stella found this need for art to express emotion unnecessary. He thought that art was primarily a visual experience. His earliest work was characterized by geometric shapes with flatly painted surfaces. Although Tom Wesselmann was also painting in New York in the 1950s, his style was quite opposite of Stella's geometric abstraction. Wesselmann was interested in popular culture, using mundane things as his subject matter. He was part of an artistic trend in the 1960s known as pop art. Wesselmann and the other pop artists used brightly colored everyday objects in their paintings. Another artist whose career started around the same time is Sam Gilliam. Influenced by the painterly abstraction popular at the time, he poured and dripped thin paint onto the painting's surface. But Gilliam's innovation was to hang and drape his canvases in such a way that the canvases themselves echoed the free-form nature of his paint application. Because Gilliam lived and worked in Washington, D.C., his paintings were not widely exhibited during the heyday of abstract expressionism. However, now he is seen as an innovator equal to Jackson Pollock, one of America's best-known painters. By the time artist Elizabeth Murray arrived on the scene in 1967, painting had been replaced as the art world's darling by a style of sculpture known as minimalism. In the face of this dominant style, She said she really had to find a way to believe in herself as a painter. By 1971, Murray had her first painting in the Whitney Museum's annual American Art Exhibition. Her work is known for its funky shapes, jazzy colors, and quirky sense of humor. Known as one of China's most important contemporary artists, Lui Wei works in many different media, including photography, sculpture, installation art, and painting. Although not a major component of his work, Lui has experimented with making paintings using irregularly shaped canvases. His paintings are more subtle than some of the other artists we have seen, and they use more restrained colors and shapes. The shaped canvas inspired the artistic experiments of these 5 artists. They have broadened the range of possibilities for artistic expression and helped to redefine what painting can be.